You know that feeling when you record the whole video and then your mic just didn't work the whole time and you gotta like do it again? Welcome back to Evil Scuba Diver. Today we're talking about every single album I listened to in January. That's right, it's that time of the month, the end of it, where we talk about everything I did during the month listen-wise. I don't know about y'all, I had a very productive January. I got a lot of mix and master work done on my album, which is coming soon, and I found myself feeling good about myself for the first time in a long time. The sun has opened its rays, and my mindset has become my companion. Also, Trump got inaugurated. Let's just get straight into it. We got some Fortnite for you. We got some awesome music in the background, and you get to hear my lovely evil voice, which is so freaking dope. Let us start. Here Come the War Jets by Brian Eno. Brian Eno, producer album. Everybody knows him. He's the guy who created ambient music or something like that. Listen to his album, and it sounds like shit. It sounds fucking horrible. It's supposed to be a good album. I thought it had classic status, but listening back to it now, you know, it's inspiring to me because it's like this dude came to be one of the best producers ever, and he made something that's kind of as bad as this, but so it's inspiring in that way. But it's like, what was he cooking like during this? You know what I mean? I mean, this is back in the analog tape days. He probably made this in his garage, and I know that this album came to be because he was basically getting all the musicians that he liked working with, and he put them all together on one album, like the drummer from one band and the guitarist from another band, the vocalist from another band, all on one song, and then he switch it again for the next song. But man, this album is just doesn't sound good. It doesn't sound like music. It sounds honestly more like a sound collage of what you get when you just record a bunch of bullshit. And in that way I can appreciate it, because it is sort of an ambient album in that respect, of that it's like a sound collage of noise and interesting sort of ideas that just sound extremely low fidelity. But man, I don't know how this is supposed to be considered a classic. Like I feel like I'm genuinely insane. I mean, I guess art is subjective for a reason, but like at face value, I know it's Brian Eno attached to this, but if it wasn't Brian Eno, if this was some dude like just randomly that like this cassette got thrown off a building and you caught it in your hands or something, and you caught it like really good and awesome because you're beautiful and you do everything really good and you catch things. If you caught it and you put it in your VCR, you'd be like, what is this? Turn it off immediately. Like it doesn't really matter the name attached to it, I feel like, for art. If it's not that great, it's not that great. So I don't know. This is an enigma of an album for me. If you think this album sounds good and you want to actually geek out about it in the comments or something, please, like, I would love to hear your take on it, because this is kind of a niche album, and it's Brian Eno, and it's not great, and I don't really know why people think it's good. Beautiful way to start the whole video, right? In January. Let's hope it's not a precursor for 2025 or nothing. But hey, let's keep going. Scrapyard, Quedeca. This is a dope produced album. If you happen to look like me, and by that I mean nerdy white people who listen to rap and might be between the ages 18 and 25, this album might have been your album of the year last year, and there's a reason why. It's because it's beautiful. It sounds like a cacophony of just creative ideas just slamming against each other in a reflective chamber of mirrors. Let me give y'all another analogy real quick. Let me double up on the analogy talk real quick. This is like if you get a Thanksgiving plate full of mashed potatoes and gravy and cranberry sauce and asparagus and the meat drippings, and you finish all of that stuff, and then in the center of the plate all the stuff kind of combines, and the cranberry sauce that was touching the gravy and the mashed potatoes and everything, you take a fork and you still eat it, and it's good, and you don't care. That's kind of what this album feels like to me. Being Yourself compared to A La Carte compared to Texas Blue, shouldn't be on the same album, but they belong here because they're all the same creator making the same production choices with the utmost attention to detail on every single vision that he's giving us for this album. So I really appreciate this album, and I think you should appreciate it as well. Alright, next album. Sung Tongs, Animal Collective. Not gonna lie, I forgot I listened to this album this month. This seems like forever ago. But this was a freaky album. I mean, people call this album Animal Collective's freak folk album, and I can understand why. It's folk music, but Avi Taylor, the vocalist, the whole time is screaming in your face, trying to give you like a bad acid trip the whole time you're listening to the album. There's a moment on this album too, it's like the third song, where it just gets beautiful out of nowhere. It's like arpeggiating guitars swiftly out of tempo, just like picking against each other like gentle currents of a nature wind, right? It's a freaky zany album. Weird one. Not exactly my favorite Animal Collective. I think my favorite Animal Collective at this moment in time probably Time Skiffs. Time Skiffs is really sort of just like striking me. I also like how it felt like a long song because every single song is just acoustic guitars. It's a folk album pretty much, right? And when every song is acoustic guitars, you gotta have a way to sort of switch it up and varify it a bit. And they do that with microphone placements and how they actually mic these guitars song to song. They all have different ways of recording the guitars and the vocals, so it makes it all sound like a different sonic experience as you're going through the album, even though it's the same instrument and same vocalist and same sort of style, right? Which I thought was actually very ingenious and very intuitive, and it very much inspired me with all these different production techniques they're doing, and I got some ideas in my cranium shaker. All right, next album. I Didn't Mean to Haunt You, Quedeca. Guys, get this. This was the best experience I've ever had listening to this album before. Isn't that crazy? I've listened to this album a couple of times before, I think like 3 or 4. I mean, because it's just a no cracks, beautiful album, just one of one vision, right? I don't know if I'd ever get a tattoo of this album on my body, like a lot of people have. I don't know if the story is as compelling as people make it out to be, or something like that, but I can really appreciate just from a sonic perspective, just like how awesome and blissful it is. And the reason it was the best experience I've had listening to this album was because I listened to it on a cardio bike that had static going on the cardio screen the entire time. I was just locked in looking at that static the entire time. Here's a picture of it. So picture me sitting there on a cardio bike, just like facing this blunt of a static screen the whole entire time as I'm listening to the album, and you have like TV channels and stuff sort of like panning through the static and stuff like that in a way that was sort of unintelligible but beautiful. And it was probably the best way you could experience this album, because this album deals a lot with like the void and static and becoming a ghost and what it means to be something that doesn't exist. And does not existing actually mean you're not existent, or does it mean that you're static? Because static technically isn't nothing, it's the motion of everything into a point where you don't have anything you can really focus on. I thought that was really interesting. It really added the experience, and it was actually the best experience I've had listening to this album. I think Scrapyard is better because I think, like I said, man, that thing is just like absolutely teeming with creativity. This one is just such a solid project, cohesive thing. It is like, it's fully realized, and I love it. So thank you, cardio bike gods, for bestowing that static upon me back then. Next album, Scythe by Grave Guy. I came for the album cover and I stayed for the bit. What do I mean by that though? What do I mean? Let me put this in a way that maybe you guys can understand, because it's kind of a niche album. I don't know if you guys have heard this before, but this is a noise album. And when I say noise album, I mean like static noise, like walls of nothing. I wrote in my notes here actually that there were no melodies until the 4th minute of the 3rd track, which is 12 minutes. And when I say no melodies, I mean like no touch of any note. Like everything before that was noise and bass static and kicks and lasers. I was listening on a chest day, and I remember getting halfway through the album, I was like, should I just like turn on something else? I'd rather listen to a podcast low key right now. But then I thought, just thug it out, dude. This is the point of listening to an album all the way through. This is the point of having an experience with an album, is to, whether you like it or not, you stick through it the whole way, because that's the creation, right? And that's kind of what I did, and I'm very glad I did, because actually the last song, their last 2 songs, there's like a 13-minute drone song on this album, and there were some really cool ideas drone-wise on this thing. Like you have like airplane hangar noises getting flanged and sort of mutilated in this side of the ear, all while you got this like static rhythmic popping on the next. There was some really interesting ideas here, as interesting as static noise music can get. But if you want to check out a song from this album, don't. No. If you like noise, if you like stuff that sounds like, sound everywhere, then you'll probably like this album, maybe. Alright, next album. The Gang Beasts soundtrack by Dose One and Bob Larder. Yes, bro. The Gang Beasts soundtrack is just really interesting, production-wise. It's just something I can get down with, man. It sounds very bouncy, it's very interesting. There's like 50 layers of percussion in every single song, so it's just so sick to break it down and just like piece by piece sort of figure out, okay, what was Bob Larder and Dose One cooking in the studio when they were mixing and mastering and producing this? Because everything is so intentional in a way, but you got like weird claps over on this side while like giant sort of excursions are happening over here. It's just a dope production album with a lot of cool bouncy ideas, and it's all production. So it's just like something to sort of immerse yourself in a very bouncy one-of-one world. And video game soundtracks, I feel like, are really, really, really good at creating worlds, because really what they have to do is sort of match up to the vibe of a physical, tangible, visual experience, right? So they have to be as zany as whatever visuals you're experiencing in a game. And I think, video game soundtracks are just like some of the best instrumental albums you can listen to because they're so complex and they're so interesting, and they usually have a lot of effort put into them. And that's no different with Gang Beasts and non-stop ideas just constantly getting shoveled into my cranium that just keep making me interested. So yeah, I'd check out this album. But yeah, let's keep going. Astro World by Travis Scott. This album is loud. I'm pretty sure Sicko Mode is technically the loudest master ever mastered in the world. There are songs that are legitimately unintentionally clipping, but the way Mike Dean handles these masters, it makes the clipping sound kind of awesome and almost like a Beastie Boys track or something. Like, it really adds to the experience of just this rageful album where, like, it is so loud you cannot contain it. And it's so, like, no bystanders or carousel or stop trying to be God. Like, there are moments where it's just, like, static. It's just, like, encompassing parts of these songs. I've listened to this album before, but this listen in particular, man, that's kind of what I got out of it. It's just, dude, this is loud. This is rageful. This is a really dope produced album. Very psychedelic. I really appreciate it exists. And also, Coffee Bean. The atmosphere on Coffee Bean should be taken to an Area 51 lab and studied sonically. This is all. It's beautiful. It's beautiful. Shout out to Johan Lennox for doing the strings on that album. I want to work with him really bad one day. I don't know. I hope he's down. Also, is this microphone cardioid or is it bidirectional or omni? Let me see. Hello, my name is Evil Scuba Diver, and I'm putting the microphone this way, which way. I think it might be cardioid. The way that it's designed, these rims right here, is to allow bass notes to pass through, get inside the diaphragm, and actually make it so that it's not omnidirectional. Because without these bass notes, or without these shingle-looking things right here, these little pads taken out, this actually would be an omnidirectional microphone, and it would sound kind of worse at the front range and just all around. So I thought that was really interesting. So it sort of focuses the energy upwards this way because the bass it's okay. I'm fucking whatever. I'm getting ahead of myself. Y'all don't care. Next album, Museum Music by Edward Skeletrix. This album's crazy. I saw Professor Sky do a breakdown of this album. He compared it to Frank Zappa, which was like, what the fuck? It's better than comparing it to JPEG Mafia, though. Like, I feel like if you listen to this album and you were uncultured, you'd like immediately compare it to JPEG Mafia because, oh, he actually uses like garbage sound effects and really weird, interesting noises, and it's the same thing as JPEG Mafia, aka Devon Hendrick. And if you said that to me, I would have to tell you, I think it's way more than that. Personally, I wouldn't scold you. I'm not that type of guy to scold somebody. I mean, maybe I am. I'm evil. To me, this is its own little cohesive vision. It sounds like AI music that plays on the loudspeakers in the back rooms, kind of, but it also has this satirical quality where it's almost making fun of the culture it's coming from while still being so inside the culture. Like, it sounds like a despondent, distorted, satirical Opium album or something from the Opium label, like a Ken Carson or Destroy Lonely record at times. But on the songs where it sounds like that, he's just mumbling and saying gibberish, and the song is called Typical Rap Song 42 or something. So he's obviously taking the piss out of this whole genre while still being a part of the genre and doing it in such a subversive way. And also, the instrumentals and the production is so intentional on this thing, it's hard to not take it a little bit seriously. You can't listen to this and just be like, oh, it's 100% satirical, because I don't really think like that. I think this album is trying to say something more, and it might be because I listened to that Professor Sky record review. He really broke it down, and he's like, there's some lyrics in this album where it's like, girl, your plastic body, I love it more than your real one, or something like that. Or it's like, girl, those piercings, that BBL isn't going to help you, take more pills. It's like this really despondent, nihilistic sort of persona that Edward Skeletrix is playing throughout this whole album. Some instrumentals just come off like ambient music. Like, they're just the most beautiful ambient pieces ever. What's the one song? I think it's called Skeletrix Island with the piano loop, and it's like, I don't even know what time signature it is. I don't think there even is a time signature to it. I just think it's a loop of beautiful reverse piano keys, and it's just an enigma. It's an enigma of a record, and there's a lot of layers to it, and I think you should listen to it if you haven't. Next album, Again by Oneohtrix Point Never. I wrote in my notes that this is an album I would not appreciate 3 years ago, and I think that's really interesting because I really appreciate it now. And the reason I wouldn't appreciate it 3 years ago would probably be because every song on this album is like a motif. There's no like repeating areas or anything. It's one experience from the start of the album all the way to the end, and there's no repeating sort of categories or verses or choruses. It's just like one long thing, just one string. If you're gonna pick two songs to listen to off this album, which I demand you do, you gotta listen to Crumville and On the Axis. Because those two are the ones that really stuck with me. Crumville gives me an unexplainable type of nostalgia from like the Windows 95 era, but then it turns into some sort of like almost UK post-punk sort of banger at the second half. And then on an axis, it starts out like you're like a sample from like, I don't even know, some sort of lo-fi garbage compactor or something with these beautiful little ambient little synths over it. And then it explodes into this sort of pseudo experimental, like what even is this EDM sort of thing. It's wild. I also recommend to experience this album in full volume and really catch everything it throws at you, because there are some elements on this album where it's jarring and you want to turn the record down and you want to turn down that amplitude a little bit, but don't fight it, because I want you to experience it the same way 1-0 Point Never made it. I think the way I described that album was a little bit too pretentious, so the next way I'm going to describe his next album is going to be a little bit different. I hope it's okay with y'all. Next album, Magic 1-0 Point Never by 1-0 Point Never. This album's it was not as cool as Again. It was like, I don't know, more chill. Like it was like outros and intros into each other, and I can't really remember it as much as Again. And it was like sort of a vibe. Next album, Pure Comedy by Father John Misty. This album I knew was good. Like people always talked about it being a really interesting sort of experience. But listening for the first time, I'm sort of realizing this is more than an album. This feels more like a TED Talk from a human about why the human experience is valuable but also cruel and sort of disheartening. It's nihilistic. It's a nihilistic album about the human experience, but it still emphasizes the beauty at points. I mean, that's the one thing I kind of didn't like about the album, was how nihilistic it got, but it brought me back with some of the most profound ways of ending songs and some of the most profound lyrical moments I think I could ask for from this record. I wrote down, Father John Misty calls the human race, or the human species, as the most soulful predator, which to me, that just took me aback. I know it might not give you the same reflection of like power that it gave to me when he's singing it and evoking emotion from his voice in song form when I just say it out loud to you on camera, but the most soulful predator. I mean, if it isn't true, you know what I mean? Humans are the type of people where we kill a turkey every year for tradition. Tell me that's not being a soulful predator, killing just for the sake of the meaning we give to the moment around the killing or something. I'm not saying we should not kill turkeys. I'm just saying from an alien perspective, if you were looking down from Earth, you'd be like, what the fuck are they doing? I think Father John Misty is simply just being an observer on this album. He's kind of detached from the human race a little bit, and he's sort of just observing it from a glass dome above Earth and sort of writing these songs. That's kind of the perspective I see him at, and I really take this album more as like a TED Talk than anything. Like it really is a TED Talk about someone observing the human race but detached from it in a way. But also he says this one lyric that was so interesting to me, where he says, we make something out of nothing, like someone else I know. So even though humans are inherently sort of weird and bad and predators and cruel and stuff like that, he's comparing us to God and giving sort of an Imago Dei aspect, basically saying like, well, you know, humans are cruel and insane, but we are all built in the image of God, and we can create beautiful things and make skyscrapers and make music and make better lives for ourselves, and we can innovate. And so those are the moments from this album I really, really appreciate more than like the nihilistic, like, oh, everybody sucks, everybody's weird, everybody's a sloppy piece of flesh. Those are the moments on the album which I feel like have a really profound impact on me, and I can appreciate all the ideas Father John Misty's throwing at me, even if some of them don't really land and some of them come off melodramatic. I just can't really escape some of the thesis points he throws in here, like I just mentioned before previously. I mean, that's just seriously some really interesting sort of mind food for me to think about. But yeah, next album, Sympathy for Life by Parquet Courts. If you guys are evil OGs, you'll remember back in November I reviewed this album and I said it was like a pseudo Talking Heads thing that wasn't really being itself, and I got a 180 on that real hard real quick. So I listened to this album again and it's beautiful. It's awesome. It's so awesome. Coming back to it, man, it just clicks way harder. The instrumentals have so much personality, and the only reason I come back to it is because I love the song Marathon of Anger. That single is awesome, and I pressed play on it on the album, and I was like walking around campus, and like I met some people and I was talking to them or whatever, and I had my headphone half off to the side, and by the time I put my headphone back on, I was like another song down the album, and I was like, okay, we'll listen to this one, and I just kept going. Like when you press an album for one song and you're just like, okay, we'll just stick with it. That's kind of why I listen to it again. The song Plant Life is also one of my favorites. The soil's got a fever, and it's like this very like uppity, happy, like almost like pseudo joyful. It's very tongue-in-cheek. This album's very tongue-in-cheek, not pseudo joyful. I don't even know what the fuck that means. It's so pretentious, but it's a very tongue-in-cheek album. Every happy groove it gets you, it's almost like giving you like a, yeah, we know it's happy. We know it's overly kind of campy and corny with the way we're presenting these ideas, but that's kind of the charm of the record. I'm kind of realizing that now. Also, the percussions all over this thing are just wild. They got a lot of interesting stuff going on, just like every which way there's some new ideas, and I really do appreciate it. Also, just admiring the guitar work as well. I mean, the guitar work on Marathon of Anger, I still think is like just, yeah, dude, great. Next album, Polygon Dwanaland by King Gizzard and the Lizard Wizard. I'm about my Giz, bro. What do you know about Giz? Turn the light on real quick. This album goes crazy. It's King Gizzard going full prog rock, and they're just absolutely taking the piss out of every single idea they possibly can. He got songs where the drums are just bust and absolutely just only on this side of your headphones. You got songs where the drums are only on this side, but they bring in a whole other section of drums and percussion on this side as well. Crumbling Castle, the 10-minute intro that opens up the album, in the last 2 minutes of the song, where it viscerally sounds like a castle is crumbling in your headphones, and you got these toms, boom, 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 and almost like this deep throat singing thing they do from Dune 2, where it's like, you got that going on as well. It literally paints a visceral picture of a castle falling in on itself in audio form, in these distorted, almost like pseudo metal guitar riffs, just like sludged out. I mean, King Gizzard just knows what they're doing, man. What I also love about this album is that it just flows directly into the next song, and then even the ending song flows directly into the intro, so you can just play this on an infinite loop while you're doing cardio, like someone I know. So you can just play that shit on an infinite loop if you wanted to, which I'll take. That's pretty cool. But yeah, man, prog rock elements are heavy, much appreciated. Riffs are heavy and much appreciated. And there's not really much I can say except this is my favorite King Gizzard album. Deserted Dunes, Welcome Weary Feet. That's a go-to when I need to do a hard set on any muscle group. That's a real good one. Also, I'm in Your Mind is a good song, but that's not the album I'm talking about. And yeah, it's great. So next album, Mahashmashana by Father John Misty. This is the second Father John Misty album I listened to after Pure Comedy, and it's the one that came out the same date as GNX. Also, I realized this, Father John Misty and Kendrick have released albums on the same Friday for like, I think 5 years in a row, which is absolutely wild. I think that's correct. Correct me if I'm wrong, which I'm probably not. But this is a beautiful album, man. This is a bigger, grander album than Pure Comedy. Pure Comedy, I didn't really value the instrumentals as much as I valued the lyrics, and this album I value sort of both of them equally. At first, I didn't really value Mahashmashana's lyrics because I didn't really know what to make of them. I thought the instrumentals were very grand, and the flutes on Mental Health were absolutely awe-inspiring, and the 8-minute opener and the 8-minute second to last song were just absolutely beautiful to me, and I was really appreciating that. But now that I kind of understand the lyrics, I have a new meaning and appreciation for this album, because this album is basically saying, at least what I'm getting from it, and this is my interpretation of course, but my interpretation is that this album is saying that basically nothing is shit except for what you think of the world, and even what you think of the world is nothing. It's not really shit either. Like the song Mahashmashana, I believe, is about love. I think the word is a translation for love in a different language, I think an Eastern language. I'm not sure about that, but even if it isn't a translation for love, if Mahashmashana does not mean love, even if it's just a gibberish word, he says it with evoking so much emotion that it gives me some sort of feeling. It really sort of doubles down on the idea that like maybe it's not even the word that matters, it's just the way that you feel it. He could have said Oboingo Shango or something, but if he said it in the same tone with the same cadence, or a cadence that worked, that evoked emotion, I would feel it the same way. And that's kind of the thing this album's getting at, because there's also a song called Mental Health on this album. The whole song is basically saying, you gotta run, you gotta go, like you're gonna regret if you don't go faster and faster, or that's kind of a lyrical theme it goes in with Mental Health. But then the ending of the song is like, but remember, all that's in your head. That's only you. Like no one else cares. No one gives a shit. The song Time Just Makes Fools of Us All, I mean, that's like an allegory. He tells stories of people who are just like, they think they're such righteous beings of their time, and then 100 years passes and they're just like fables of like the bad way of living or something. It's a really interesting song, really interesting sort of album, and yeah, I kind of get out of it that like really what matters if not just your own experience? And your own experience, what does that matter if you're the only one who has it, right? But it's It's a weird album. I don't really have my head wrapped around it, and that's kind of what makes it interesting to me too. It's why I'm still listening to it. I listened to it literally earlier today, and yeah, this is the one that's kind of impacted me the most this month. Next album, Title Memory XO by Igloo Ghost. This is a sick little electronic album. I listened to this album while playing Mario Kart 7 on my 3DS. That was a fun experience. I think it really added, to be real. It really added. I was absolutely taken over first place in my Koopa Kart. Listening to this shit in my headphones. It was really good. But one thing I gotta say, a lot of the same hats, a lot of the same percussions, a lot of the same drums and stuff. I mean, I guess it's to be expected. It's kind of like one long song. The album essentially functions as a giant DJ set where one song sort of flows into the other, and I mean the vocals are really manipulated and artificial and like distorted at some points. I think it's really awesome. It just sounds really visceral. And this is like UK grime. There's like a bunch of drill stuff going on, a bunch of interesting rhythms that I didn't really think would work in this sort of context. I mean, I don't know. I was really just sort of vibing out on Mario Kart 7 low key. This album was sort of just like the soundtrack for that experience of me taking over some chumps in AI land. And yeah, no real complaints. Thought it was cool. Next album, Cavalcade by Black Midi. Listen to Cavalcade by Black Midi. This is their second album after Schlagenheim. I mean, to make this album after Schlagenheim is low-key just fucking insane. Like, what are you even thinking? This album's like an opera compared to their first album. The lead singer is doing the most insane, outrageous shit with his voice, Jordy, of course. And this album goes in a much more beautiful direction. I mean, Schlagenheim was like the one where they just go crazy and they just explode on the scene. It's three dudes from the UK and they're like 20 years old and they're just kind of getting all their teenage angst out on the guitars and stuff like that. But this one, they really pull back. They get like strings, saxophones, 10-minute Odyssey songs with like beautiful like ascending chords and stuff. Like, it's a really weird album, but you still get some hard songs in here, like John L. or Hogwash and Balderdash, which I'm not really a big fan of Hogwash, because that song sounds like them just getting together and making like a caricature of a Black Midi song rather than them just being Black Midi in the studio. But all the beautiful songs in this album sort of stick out to me more than the hard ones or the harsh ones, like Marlene de Trick or what's it called, Diamond Stuff. Those two are my go-tos. Ascending Forth also has a really interesting story. It's kind of meta. I think Jordy Greep might be talking about himself and his own like insecurities with making music while making Cavalcade, because the song is about an artist who can't figure out how to make a song, so he just writes a bunch of ascending forth chords 65 times in a row, and that is legitimately what the song itself is comprised of in the moment as you're listening to it. So it's like a meta commentary as you're listening to the song about maybe where the song's motivation came from. I'm not sure. Maybe it's just a story and this is just a way to tie it in musically. But I thought that was kind of an interesting thing to pick apart. Oh yeah, I listened to this album a lot in September, and this is sort of just a revisiting of it this month. I thought it was really cool. Next album, Balloonerism by Mac Miller. 7 years after Mac passed, his estate releases an album he made in 2014, and this album, it's one of his best. The lyrics though, man, they strike me so heavily, like due to the context, of course. I mean, he made this album when he was going through his most drug-fueled part of his life, back when he made Faces in 2015. I think this album was made in like 2014, around the same era, right? And across this whole album, he's talking about like how I didn't thought anybody died on a Friday, and it's like, of course he goes on to die on a Friday, like 4 years later in his time. So it's like so insane. It's almost like he predicted his own fate in a very morbid way, but the music itself is so beautiful and organic, and you can tell this dude is just musically teeming with ideas, and he just wants to try everything in the books and do it as good as possible. Like the way he's singing and using his voice on the end of $5 pony rides, can I, dude, this dude knows exactly what he's trying to do musically. And he's so impassioned by it. He doesn't even care how he comes off. His soul is music. It's like, man, like even his like quote unquote scraps or quote unquote like something he didn't release, it's still like one of his best albums, like in his discography as a posthumous release. And it doesn't strike me as a lazy release or something to just get money. It strikes me as a celebration of how artistic Mac was, and just releasing it 2025 in the middle of this decade. I think it's just if this is his send-off, man, it's a beautiful one. And yeah, man, rest in peace, Mac Miller. Next album, The Slow Rush by Tame Impala. This might be crazy to say, but I think I like this album more than Currents. I know a lot of y'all back there are like, what, isn't Currents like the best Tame Impala album? I thought that was supposed to be the best one. I don't care. You can die. I shouldn't say that, actually. That's not a good thing to say. But the reason this album sticks with me more is because it's like a more dance feel to it. It's a more tribal feel to it. He's using also, it's more natural is what I really want to use the word. It's like all the drums are very natural. You got bongos in the mix, timbales, shakers. It's very tropical almost. And this album just sort of fills me with like beautiful summer vibes, man. That's all I can really say. It's just like really, really fully realized. And also the sound of the drums, the sound of the way everything is sort of mixed and everything. Those ending drums on One More Hour, where it's like the very tail end of the record. That's like a really interesting choice. Posthumous Forgiveness has really interesting ideas. Like this whole album's kind of just teeming with the stuff I love. And also the fact that it is sort of just like the most poppy Tame Impala album. Like there's no really hints of like psych rock excursions or anything. It's just like you're swapping songs like Let It Happen for songs like Breathe Deeper and songs like It Might Be Time and Borderline, right? And the fact that he can also mix in these lyrics of like such interesting introspection about what it means to be an artist moving through time, and how maybe, you know, when he was younger he had more passion, or maybe like the time is passing too quick and he doesn't know exactly what to hold on to, or like what's the next move, or like, you know, what does the future hold. It's like it's a very contemplative album. It feels like an artist's album. All the lyrics very much strike me as Kevin sort of staring himself in the mirror and reconciling sort of like, who am I as an artist? Like who am I as somebody who used to have passion? And he still does have passion, but maybe it's wavering, or maybe it's changed, or maybe it looks different, or it comes from a different place. And you got this whole theme of time throughout the album, and how time is slowly taunting him the whole time he's trying to create. And that's something I can really relate to as well. I don't know, kind of really struck me this time around. I think this listen sort of just cemented The Slow Rush as probably my favorite Tame Impala, like over Lonerism, which is hard because Apocalypse Dreams is like one of my favorite songs of all time. And it's just it's so cohesive to me overall. Is like a really interesting, unique project. I'm even appreciating the softer songs like Is It True and Tomorrow's Dust, which I never really appreciated before, but now I'm coming back to it. I'm just appreciating the lo-fi soundscapes. And On Track as well actually is like a beautiful song. Fuck. On Track might be one of my favorite songs by Tame Impala. I can't believe I just blanked on that, dude. So I mean, this album definitely is my favorite. Just like, it's just front to back, just loaded with color. And I think if you haven't listened to it in a while, you should, because I got a lot out of it this time around. Next album, Seychelles by Masayoshi Takanaka. This is the album with Otengo Suerte, which if you don't know what that song title is, if I played you the music, you probably would, but I'm not going to play the music because I don't want to give Takanaka any of my royalty money, my royalties for my 100 view video here. Fuck. It's just a masterfully produced, beautiful, like Hawaiian/Japanese beach vibe album. Everything's turned up to 11. There's really not many vocals on this thing. It's just Masayoshi making beautiful compositions with his guitar and just beautiful chords. And the song Tropic Birds to end off this album, it's like a jazz fusion Japanese beach rock excursion thing, and it made me do the stank face unironically. I don't say that in an ironic way. It made me, when I was walking down campus listening to this, I was like, ugh, because the strings come in at the perfect opportune times. The melodies sway over each other in a way that makes me feel like limitless if we want to get corny with it. And yeah, man, ideas are flying off the canvas, bro. It makes me excited to produce new music. It makes me excited to learn guitar more. It makes me excited to work with live instrumentation. It's just like an inspiring album to me for the beautiful, intangible vibe I got from listening to this front to back. And this is his first album. This is his first one. And he starts it off with Otengo Suerte. Oh my gosh. I mean, yeah, like this is beautiful. Yeah, man, that's all I really gotta say. You should definitely check this one out. Next album, Nervous by Shy High. If y'all know Shy High, he's been around for a while. 2021, he dropped Independent Films, which was like his breakout single. And since then, he's dropped EPs here and there. He's had eras. He's had like the Joe era, where he released like a bunch of these songs in the summer, like in a different like style. But this is like the one where he took an era extra far and he dropped the whole project, and it's this Nervous era. It's 8 songs of the most insane produced, wacky ideas possible. It's like Shy High was already doing something 100% unique and in his own lane, but now he comes out with a completely different project that's even more jarring and violently different than anything you could have really imagined he'd be capable of. Some of these songs are reminding me like Echo 2K in Blade, the way he crafts these like aesthetically interesting sort of foreign worlds with glitches and bloops and like all. He's using guitar fuzz and amps as like percussion and stuff like that. Like I don't even know what's going on. He's got like 2013 Chief Keef mixtape nostalgia at some points with like songs like Tricking Me, but like combining it with jerk beats and like the song Fertilizer. I don't even know what inspiration you pull from to get that, but like this is seriously 100% a cohesive vision. Also the song Bad, I can compare it to a lot of things, but at the end of the day I think Shy High's intuition reigns above any inspiration he might have taken from people. Like I really do think like he sort of just put his mind to something and made it work, and he dropped 8 songs, 20 minutes, a cohesive little project of just like of something that you've never heard before. And I can compare it to stuff, but Borderline, man, this is impossible to pin down and just say this is where he got this is where he got that. This is just teeming with ideas. Like he's compressing and distorting his vocals and then using it and he's sampling them himself and using it as an instrument and then layering on top of his other vocals and then pitching them. It's just like, I don't even know what this project file looks like. This is a weird album or a weird project. It's only 8 songs, but I think you should listen. It's really dope. It's 101 territory. So yeah, next album, Hail to the Thief by Radiohead, a political album for a political time. I like this album. I think Sail to the Moon, Go to Sleep, They're There. The first 3 songs actually are like some of the best music Radiohead I think has put out. I really love those songs. This time around I listened to it, I thought it was kind of demo quality. Some of the songs were kind of leaping out to me as like, that's probably not right. That's probably iffy on my part. I'm looking for certain sounds that just aren't there. Like Where I End and You Will Begin comes off as a demo to me. It sounds like a B-side. It sounds like you could lump it in with like a Bangers and Mash territory on like the In Rainbows Disc 2 or something. I don't know. I don't know why that's there. And the claps on They Suck Young Blood are kind of annoying me because the claps don't sound real. And it's just like, and the gloaming. What's the gloaming? What is that? I can't really put a grasp on it. There's no form or function to it for the first 50 seconds. And even then it's like, I don't want to listen to it. It's a pretty pessimistic listen this time around. That being said, it's not all pessimistic because the beauty with having a bloated, incohesive album is that there are other songs that just stand out like gems, like Sail to the Moon and They're There and Go to Sleep. And the first 3 songs, in all honesty, are some of my favorite songs. There's just such beautiful moments on this album. Also, I think Wolf at the Door is such an interesting take on a song too. I like that. You're never gonna hear a Radiohead pocket like that ever again. I really appreciate that existing. Scatterbrain's got some cool ideas. It's just, I really wish this was cut down. It's not like they made a bad album. I like this album. It's just this time around, for some reason, I wasn't fully invested. It came off to me like a bunch of demos, but that's okay, man. I'll probably listen to it a year from now and be like, holy fuck, I was tripping, so don't worry. Next album, Little Dark Age by MGMT. Listen to this one all the way through. You know, I really wish MGMT wouldn't have taken a 5-year hiatus after they dropped the most experimental, interesting psych rock album of 2013. They're self-titled, but they did. They took a 5-year hiatus because they got shit reviews and they felt bad about themselves. I think they came back with a 80s pop album that was cool. When I hear this album, all I think about is like, man, what would they do if they just kept going with the Congratulations era? Like, you know what I mean? Like, I want to have like 5 more albums of that shit, but it's whatever. People change, stuff changes, but that's not to say A Little Dark Age is a bad album. I think it's a beautiful album. I think Me and Michael is a really dope song. That grew on me a lot. I remember listening to Me and Michael way back. I didn't really like it. I thought the melody was like so simple and plain. But now when I listen back to Me and Michael, I'm enamored by sort of the production of it. It's very 80s. It's very glamorous, glam pop, it's gay. And also, When You're Small, that had to be updated production-wise, 100%. I don't remember it having all these little bells and whistles and weird production glitches in the production at all. I thought it was a pretty simple song. I remember the build-up and the synth build-up and all that, but listening back to it, there's like production elements that were not here before. They were not here before, I swear on it. And I don't know what that is. Did they update it or something? Maybe I'm just tripping? I cannot be tripping. There's no way. I wrote it down as like multiple times, like that had to be updated. There's so much stuff going on. Yeah, just a lot of production elements I don't remember, and now I'm listening back to it and I'm just like, okay, that's there, I guess. And yeah, it was a cool album. Little Dark Age, great. Wish they'd make some more music. I love MGMT. I'm an MGMT lover over here. I love managing. I love management. I love when people are managed. Next album, Coyote by Tommy Richmond. This is a fun listen, dude. Strapped on the cardio bike and listened to this album from front to finish in one sitting, and it was cool. It was fun. I know the lo-fi aesthetic can probably turn people off. Fantano gave it a 3 because he thought it just wasn't a good produced album. I think you gotta be well versed in Tommy Richmond lore to really appreciate this album to its full extent. Like, you gotta be here before Alligator. Me, myself, man, I've been here before Alligator. I produced a song, Paycheck, for Tommy, or a little bit of it, way back when the outro for Paycheck, way back. I've been on Tommy's journey. I know how he's evolved. I know the 3M crew. I know everything is punk. Jonah Roy, Max Vosberg. I'm kind of in tune with the whole crew here. I kind of know what their vibe is about, so I can really appreciate the twist Tommy took for this album, especially not putting $1 Million Baby in the hit singles on this album. He simply brought his crew up with him and made a very interesting little cohesive, fun little project that's dealing with R&B sort of 80s sort of aesthetics. Vanity is also such a complex song to me because I don't know if people are really reading into Tommy Richmond as much as I am for Vanity, but Vanity to me sounds like a very complex, layered lyrically song. Because Vanity is pretty much instrumentally the climax point of the record. It's this big, like, golden moment, like top of the mountain cacophony. And the realization, or the big moment lyrically that's accompanied with the song, is that he's going to do it for himself. He's going to indulge in vanity. And it's almost like a cautionary tale to me. That's not what you want to do. You shouldn't have this giant sounding moment of the record be, I'm going to do it just for myself. Like, I'm going to, like, indulge in selfishness. But that's what he does, and it almost seems like Tommy sort of welcoming the new portion of his career where he's a big artist, and he's saying, like, I'm gonna indulge in vanity. I'm gonna do it for myself. It's heartwarming because it's like Tommy made it, but it's also in a different light. I take these lyrics as like, man, this could be a commentary on like how to go about it the wrong way, you know? And the height of the mountain being vanity, and vanity really being nothing. And I think it's a very interesting theme to me. I don't know if people are reading into it that much, but I am, and that's what I take away from it. I think it's a beautiful song. I think it's one of Tommy's best, and I think Jonah Roy goes absolutely ham on the production. Last song as well is so good. Seems like. Also want to say real quick, for anybody who doesn't really understand Coyote or like doesn't like the lo-fi aesthetics, I would take it as charm. Fantano criticized the vocals on Letterman sounding like an MP3 file that you can't understand. I feel like that's intentional. Like, that's the charm. That's the point. Like, Tommy is intentionally leaning into these lo-fi vocal stacks and these lo-fi vocal processing things, and he's making something that's like just baseline, just a groove. He's not really focused on like how wondrous and everything needs to be. I don't think he's really producing his songs like that. He's producing them as sort of little momentary capsules of vibes. I see like the vocals on Letterman as more of like an experimental choice that gives charm more than anything. Like, if the vocals on Letterman were normal, I wouldn't really remember the song as much. I think it adds to the song low-key, so that's something to consider. But that's January. Technically, I listened to one more album this January, and that'd be my own, because I've been mixing and mastering that album every day as well. Basically getting everything nice and fine-tuned and right and all that sort of jazz. But that's that, man. That is that. I hope y'all had a good month. I hope the next one's dope. If you guys want to request albums from me too, feel free to do that. Just make sure they're good. If they're bad, I'm gonna roast you. Roast you on a spit. What the fuck am I talking about? I hope you have a good one. Don't be evil, be good. Nobody likes being evil. That's not fun really at all. I will see y'all. Thank y'all for tuning in. Have a good one. Also, I saw The Brutalist. That was a crazy. Hold up. I thought it was 3.5 stars when I first watched it, but now I'm thinking it's like 4-star territory after thinking about it for a while. So that's also cool. All right, I'll see y'all. Have a good one.